Okay, hello and welcome. It's Zankus Watch again. I am here to do a quick reaction to the interview of Tara Reade by Tucker Carlson. This came out a couple of weeks ago, May 8th, 2024, and I have not done a reaction to it. So it's probably going to be just a rehash. I haven't watched the whole thing. It's probably going to be just a rehash of everything she said before, her constantly changing story, whatever version she has now, a lot of victimhood narrative, a lot of pro-Russian propaganda. Tucker Carlson, believe it or not, used to not believe her. Used to be somebody who said, I don't believe her story. And this was during the 2020 election. Now, why he's changed his mind, I'm not sure. First of all, I don't think he actually believes her. I think he's doing it for propaganda purposes because he seems to be very much pro-Russian at this point. If I had to venture a guess, and this is pure speculation, I think he said that she was not credible, which was the correct take, because Trump did not want her story to be focused on because he knew then people would focus on all of his sexual assault allegations, which were far more well founded than anything that Tara Reade had to say. Also, Trump's DOJ, something that Tara Reade doesn't like to talk about, but Trump's DOJ was the DOJ that initially opened a case on her saying that she was a Russian spy. She likes to talk about the Biden DOJ. The Biden DOJ has been weaponized against her, but it was the Trump DOJ, no friend of Joe Biden, who initially opened the case. Two DOJs from opposite sides of the political spectrum have opened a case against her. It's her. She is a criminal. The reason why they both opened a case against her is that they both knew she was an illegal foreign agent trying to influence a federal election. The Biden DOJ has been, I believe, the most nonpartisan DOJ I've ever seen. It literally indicted Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. She keeps talking about how the DOJ is a Biden DOJ and the Biden DOJ has been weaponized against her. Why would the Biden DOJ indict Biden's beloved son, Hunter Biden, unless that DOJ is actually not under Biden's control? Unless the DOJ is, hey presto, actually just doing its job, which means that she is just as much a criminal as Hunter Biden is, probably more so. In fact, I would venture to say a lot more so. And the DOJ is doing its job regardless of the political aisle and the political side of the people it's prosecuting. So now, with that being said, let's react to this quick interview.
So your lawyers have sued the Biden Department of Justice for misconduct. Tell us about the suit, why you filed it, what you hope to achieve by it.
Yeah, well, my attorney actually had filed a complaint with the Inspector General about the way I was treated by the FBI and DOJ and how they were harassing me. And
it's not harassment if you're a criminal. They weren't harassing you. They were investigating you. And it turned out you were breaking crimes. So now you're saying there's a sealed indictment against you and you had to run away to Russia? That's something that they do to criminals. I love the way that she's saying harassment. Again, and I've repeated this many times when I've reacted to Tara Reade, but it always comes down to victimhood. That's the only language she speaks. I've been harassed, I've been abused, I've been this, I've been that. Her entire life is defined by victimhood.
And they didn't receive a response. Surprise, surprise. So after we waited, there was no response. He filed a tort claim, and it's for $10 million. And
yeah, right. $10 million. That's going nowhere. You see, here's the thing. The statute of limitations has expired when it comes to both criminal and civil charges against Biden, whom she claimed sexually assaulted her. So now she's filing, I suppose, a lawsuit against the lawyers for misconduct of the DOJ. Now, you can file a lawsuit for anything. This is, of course, not a real lawsuit. What it is another rather pathetic attempt to keep her name in the news. She always needs to try and keep her name in the news. Now, she hasn't been able to do that ever since she was debunked several years ago, around May 2020, when it turned out she had committed perjury several times, when her story just kept on changing, when the people who are correlating her story turned out to be lying. More on that later, by the way. I'm going to be doing another podcast on that later. When it turned out that she was lying, her name basically disappeared from the news. The news organization said she's not credible. And since then, all she's done is prove just how incredible she is. to the point where she actually defected to Russia to escape a criminal investigation against her. And now here she is in Russia with Tucker Carlson doing an interview saying that once again, she's the victim because the Biden DOJ, let me remind you, the same DOJ that has just indicted Joe Biden's son. So again, a DOJ that is no friend of Biden. Yes, he appointed the attorney general, but remember, again, this is a nonpartisan DOJ. A partisan DOJ would have let Hunter Biden slip away. This DOJ went out of its way to indict Hunter Biden. So this DOJ is very much nonpartisan. It's going to indict whomever breaks the law, whether this person is a friend of Joe Biden or a family member of Joe Biden or not. So the fact that she says she's being persecuted because Biden is so hell-bent on persecuting someone who's already been debunked against him is ridiculous. She's being persecuted because she broke the law. Or prosecuted, I should say. I have to admit, I mix up the words persecute and prosecute. I am not a lawyer here. So apologies in advance for that.
Basically what the outcome will be, hopefully, is that they will open my FBI files and then expunge them. And the criminal case.
Oh, so she's got charges. She's got charges in her FBI files. Yeah, that's something an innocent person would say. Yeah, please expunge my FBI files, please. No, I think those files are staying put, which means that you're never coming back to the U.S. You're never coming back to the U.S. unless Trump pardons you. I don't think he's going to do that. Even if he should come back to power, God forbid, I don't think he would ever pardon her. Or actually, no, she's never just coming back to the U.S. Or Russia kicks her out for some reason. It depends. Plus, keep in mind that she's extremely unhealthy. She has a lot of heart problems. She has, according to her, an untreated aortic aneurysm. I don't know how truthful it is. I hope she's lying about that because if she does have an untreated aortic aneurysm, that's terrible for her. Russia does not have the best health care, and she's in Russia with that, a lot of other health issues. She's given several indications on her Twitter account that she may also have diabetes. She's morbidly obese. She's almost 60. She might be 60 years old at this point. Her position isn't great.
That has been opened against me in Northern California, the one that's sealed, will be revealed. Because that was opened by DOJ and FBI, where they took all my Twitter communications, now X, it's called, but Gmail, you name it, all my social media was taken under sealed warrants.
She tends to swallow like that when she's lying or she's saying something that's uncomfortable. I do actually believe that she took her Twitter communications and her Gmail and all of that, but I believe it's also because they reveal criminal activity on her part. And that's why she's nervous. That's why she's afraid. Because I do think she communicated with certain people and constructed certain narratives that were meant to illegally influence a federal election. And she did it through messages in Gmail and Twitter. Whenever she swallows like that in the middle of a sentence, it means she's nervous or she's lying about something. And she's nervous because she now knows the FBI has those communications, and they've used that to construct a case around her. That's why she fled to Russia. Well, she fled to Russia for several reasons, but I think it's mostly because she wanted to avoid getting arrested. Whenever I hear that small swallow in the middle of a sentence, I know, oh, she's saying something that's either a lie or she's trying to cover up some malfeasance on her part.
The only reason I know about the sealed warrants and it was publicized is because a Twitter lawyer had called and told me that this has happened and they had made a motion in court to tell me.
So wait a second. I thought she said Matt Gaetz told her there was a sealed warrant, a sealed indictment against her. Now she's changing the story. She's saying, quote, a Twitter lawyer, unquote, called her and said there was a sealed indictment. You see, this is the thing with her lies. She keeps changing the story. She initially said Matt Gaetz informed her that there was a sealed indictment against her. And then when a lot of people, including Lev Parnas, informed her that means Matt Gaetz broke the law if he said such a thing, she suddenly seemed to try and cover for Matt Gaetz. Now she's saying a Twitter lawyer called her and said there was a sealed indictment. People who are actually lawyers have talked to me on this account, have given, on the Zankus Watch account, and said if there's a sealed indictment, she wouldn't know, period. No one would be able to tell her. So the fact she says there's a sealed indictment is in itself a lie. She just would not be able to know. and Matt Gaetz wouldn't be able to tell her. And now she's saying a Twitter lawyer, quote, a Twitter lawyer told her there was a sealed indictment. So it wasn't Matt Gaetz, it was somebody else. The way she keeps changing the story is bizarre.
And so this case had impaneled a grand jury, so it went pretty far. So it's just like shy of indictment. But what are they going to indict me?
They impaneled a grand jury. You see, why is she starting off her interview? All she's doing, starting off this interview with Tucker Carlson, is showing her criminality. She's trying to show this to nail down her victimhood status, see how much they persecute me. See how much I am being harassed and bullied by the Biden administration. But what she's actually doing is proving that yes, she's a criminal. I mean, the entire FBI and DOJ is going against her. I think the more likely reason is that she herself broke the law. The fact that she opens this interview not talking about the alleged sexual assault, but about all these criminal cases against her, sort of proves her criminality. Also, it sort of proves the falseness of her initial allegation of sexual assault that she put against Joe Biden, because she likes to really talk about the things that have actually hurt her. So she'll talk again and again and again and again about how she's prosecuted, how she's bullied. She actually did lose her job when she was exposed as somebody who committed perjury as an expert witness. That actually hurt her. So she's going to talk about that. The fact she's had to flee to Russia because the FBI and the DOJ are finally prosecuting her for her crimes, that actually hurt her. So she's going to talk about that. She talks about things that actually hurt her. She doesn't talk about the sexual assault because it never actually happened. It didn't actually happen. So it's not something that actually hurt her. She doesn't have that same emotional resonance there.
Before, well, they won't tell me. Now, as an American citizen, that's infuriating, right?
But I think I am confused. I think a lot of people watching this are confused. You, of course, are most famous for recounting in public your experience of sexual assault, and I think it was a sexual assault by then Senator
Tucker Carlson is changing his mind there. He actually was one of the people who first doubted Tara Reade, but I also talked about that earlier. What's interesting here in this exchange is that he's realizing they're getting off track. She's babbling on and on about all her criminal charges and how much trouble she's in and how that's totally, totally unfair. And he's realizing that's making her look bad. He has one objective. Tucker Carlson has one objective. That's to make Biden look bad and make sure that Putin's agent, Trump, is brought back to power. So if his interview starts out with her babbling about all her criminal cases, and that makes her look bad, even though she's just sort of whining about how she's harassed, he realizes this interview is getting out of hand. Let's stop talking about her criminal cases, and let's get on to her alleged charges. He needs to get it back onto the topic that makes Joe Biden look bad. The topic that's already been debunked many times, and which we will be debunking from now until kingdom come, because she keeps on pretending that it hasn't been debunked. But he needs to get it back on the topic that will hurt Biden. And that topic is not going to be her criminal charges that she keeps babbling on about.
Joe Biden in an elevator when you worked for him.
Not an elevator, corridor.
Yeah, it keeps changing. The location keeps changing. She initially said it was like a small room next to a corridor. Now she says it was an open corridor. And the fact that even Tucker Carlson is confused, like at least an elevator would make sense because the elevator is less trafficked than the massive corridor between the subway station and the Capitol Rotunda where she alleges this occurred. I don't know how it happened, but she kept on changing the location where the sexual assault happened. It was in a nook, it was in a cranny, it was in a small room somewhere, it was in an open corridor. She keeps changing it. So it's understandable that Carlson himself, even though he's an interviewer, is not clear on the details.
Quarter, I beg your pardon. And unlike a lot of people who make these claims, you have contemporaneous evidence in your mother's call to Larry King Live, which came out years later. It's an amazing story.
Yeah, let's talk about her mother's call to Larry King Live. Now, Larry King Live in 1993 started a show about harassment in Washington, D.C. Harassment and bullying. It wasn't sexual harassment. It was just straight up the atmosphere of harassment and bullying that was happening in Washington, D.C. Now, Larry King brought this episode forward because of the suicide of Vince Foster. Now, there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories about Vince Foster, but what happened was that Vince Foster died by suicide. And in his suicide note, he talked about how Washington was an evil place full of bullies and how much harassment he had been receiving in Washington, D.C. So Larry King put together an episode talking about harassment and bullying. And then Tara Reade's mother called into that Larry King episode and said, my daughter was also harassed and bullied by the staff of Joe Biden. Now, she didn't say Joe Biden's name, but she did say the senator she was working for, probably Biden. And this sort of correlates with Tara Reade's essential attitude that the only reason why she fails is that other people harass and bully her. And this is, of course, something that she would say after coming home after blowing a huge opportunity in Washington, D.C. She was harassed and bullied. The other staff was mean to her. And so the mother never said anything about sexual harassment. What she said on that Larry King live show is that the staff of the senator harassed and bullied her daughter. And she was saying this is like what happened with Vince Foster, where he was harassed and bullied. Now, I have no doubt that Tara Reade told her that she was harassed and bullied by the staff. She needed an excuse to say why she was fired. It later turned out that she was fired for throwing out her constituents' mail and simply not working. And Reade herself provided evidence of this, of her videotaping her colleagues while they were working, and they clearly wanted her to stop videotaping them. One person even covered his face with a folder. She was not allowed to go into that office with that camcorder and record them. She was harassing her colleagues. She was not working. They finally told her, "You're fired. You're not working. You're fired." And she probably told her mother that she was harassed and bullied, and that's why she was fired. There is no contemporaneous evidence at all that she was ever sexually assaulted by Joe Biden.
And I think it's a credible story. But what did you do wrong? How did you wind up the subject of a sealed potential indictment, of a criminal investigation by the U.S. government? What was your crime?
I think not shutting up. I think because I just wouldn't stop talking. I kept trying to push for an investigation. If you recall,
No, that's not it. The reason why she was investigated, I'm guessing, is that it was a FARA violation. It was it was involved a violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. She was working as a foreign agent for Russia. She was working for Russia to help illegally influence a federal election by putting a false accusation against Biden. And that is against the law. You have to register as a foreign agent in the United States if you're going to help advance a foreign nation's interests within the United States. If you don't, you're basically a spy or a useful idiot in her case, or an operative. There are plenty of people who have talked about Joe Biden. There are, Trump. There are all of Trump's associates. There, there are people like, Rashida Tlaib, who accuse him of a quote unquote genocide in Gaza. There are people who are, constantly, talking about Biden and putting false accusations and saying he's a child molester and a this and a that. I myself run an account for a guy named Anthony Zankis, who is a professor who's constantly accusing Joe of child molestation and, clipping out bits of C-SPAN footage and slowing it down and making it look like Joe Biden is doing something illegal. These people are not arrested. Nobody is arrested. All those, the 6 or 7 women in 2019 who said, hey, Joe Biden likes to hug people. Hey, Joe Biden needs to respect people's personal space. They have not been arrested. You know why? Because they never violated the law. There are people everywhere who have said the worst things about Joe Biden, and they have never been arrested or persecuted. The woman who runs Libs of TikTok, she's not arrested. Tucker Carlson, he hasn't been arrested. I mean, all these people have not been arrested. You only be arrested if you break the law, and that's why she's, that's why she has a sealed indictment against her. That's why she has charges against her, allegedly, but that's what she's saying. That's why she's being investigated, because she actually did break the law. There's a difference between talking about a public figure, criticizing a public figure, even smearing a public figure, which is what Zankis does daily. It's hard to get persecuted for that. But if you are actively breaking the law, if you are accepting money from a hostile foreign power to illegally influence an election, yeah, you are going to get investigated for that.
Jen Psaki,
yes.
she was asked one question one time. Peter Juicy, I think.
Oh, I think she's going to criticize Jen Psaki. You see, Tara Reade really hates women who are prettier and more successful than her. So, of course, she's going to talk about Jen Psaki, who's, pretty and successful and married with beautiful children. And, she was a Biden administration spokesperson. And now I believe she is a commentator on a news program. All the things that Tara Reade never got to achieve. So, of course, Jen Psaki is going to be the evil bitch in her narrative.
He asked the question and said, about me, about Tara Reade. And she said, oh, that's been litigated. It was never litigated. She lied outright. It's never been litigated. It's never been investigated.
What do you mean litigated? I think it's been discussed, debunked. I mean, yeah, go ahead, whine about the fact that Psaki may, have dismissed you outright. It's been debunked. It's been debunked several times. Believe me. I mean, it's never been litigated. You just talked about how you have this lawsuit and that complaint and this complaint. It's been debunked. And Judicial Watch has already, tried to sue the University of Denver to try and open Joe Biden's files. Was that not litigation? Yeah, it's been litigated. And here we go. Let me just tell you, there's been absolutely no basis for either the University of Denver to open its files or for anyone to really believe Tara Reade. And, yeah, she can die bitter about that. She probably will.
And I was asking for an investigative. All they did was pay money to have media hit pieces done on me.
But
now that's an accusation that I really need to see backed up by fact, because that actually could be an illegal smear. Now, obviously, it's not going to be persecuted. It's very hard to prosecute defamation. It's very, very hard. So, I mean, she can just say whatever she wants because the Biden administration qualifies as a public figure, and she says they paid people to, to run hit pieces. But there have been massive investigations everywhere. The PBS News Organization interviewed 74 people from Biden's administration. The New York Times interviewed people. Everybody interviewed people. And all they did was unearth all the crimes that you did, Tara Reade. They unearthed everything that was shady about you. Nobody was able to correlate what you were saying. In fact, the one person who did correlate you, the one person who did corroborate your accusations, she turned out to be a liar. And I'm going to address her next, by the way, because I think she's a very interesting figure. I love the fact that we still don't know her name. But every single investigation just keeps unearthing what a liar you are. So why do you want this investigation? Why do you want this investigation, Ms. Tara Reade? Because you have one job. The Kremlin has one job that is given you, and that is to keep your name in the news. And if they investigate you, even if all they turn up is more wrongdoing on your part, it will put your name back in the news. It'll put your name back at the top of Google searches. And it'll make your name pop up for something besides defected to Russia because of criminal charges, defected to Russia because she's a shady ass bitch. Like, that is what's going to happen. You have one job, and it's to keep your name in the news. That's why you want that investigation. You know nothing actually happened.
Of course they did. And you were attacked. Yeah. The whole believe all women thing turned out not to be true, I guess.
Right. No, it's not true. There's no Me Too.
Well, we're not going to believe women who lie. We're not going to believe women who lie. I mean, listen, there were some women who lied about Judge Kavanaugh. That not the woman who was interviewed, not Christine Blasey Ford. She was telling the truth, but there were a couple of women who ended up not telling the truth. And the fact is, if you are a known liar, then no, we are not going to believe you. We are not going to believe people. By the way, look at Tucker Carlson's expression here. He has this bizarre, phony, fake laugh that's kind of creepy. It's like he knows to squint his eyes up and open his mouth, and it looks like he doesn't actually know how to laugh or to express joy. It's bizarre. Like that's the expression that he puts in all his photographs, and it's weird. It's a little creepy.
There's no Me Too. But a criminal investigation into you is a completely separate category.
Yeah.
And really an escalation of a kind most Americans can't understand. Like, why would they possibly be criminally investigating you?
Because she's a criminal. Just throwing that out there,
Do you know?
There were two. Yeah. I mean, the first one was for perjury when I was an expert witness, and it took me lawyers and thousands of dollars to clear that. They had to drop that.
They never cleared it. They actually confirmed that you committed perjury, that you said that you were a congressional aide when you were a staff aide, that you said you had a bachelor's degree from Antioch College when you possessed no such degree. You had committed perjury multiple times. The thing is that perjury is hard to prosecute, and what you did not really quite meet the threshold of materiality, which, as a non-lawyer, my understanding of materiality is that uh, yes, she lied under oath, but it may not have affected the case. So, in that case, we will not spend the money and resources to prosecute her and put her in jail for that. However, several people for whose trial she testified at, those defendants who are on trial where she testified, they got their sentences massively reduced and they ended up being released. And there is at least one law firm that is advertising to people who had Tara Reade testify at their trial. She's saying, if Tara Reade testified at your trial, you may be eligible for compensation. Tara Reade is a mesothelioma of expert witnesses. That's how toxic she is. She committed perjury. She was investigated for that. And the investigation said, yep, she's a perjurer, but you know what? We can't prove materiality, and we've got bigger fish to fry in the Monterey County, so we're not going to prosecute her, which happens all the time. If the crime is just not really large enough to expend resources to go to trial, which can be expensive and time consuming, then they're not going to go to trial. Doesn't mean the crime didn't occur. The perjury is, without all doubt, quite
that case. And then they came at me with the sealed case, which I can't do anything about because I'm not even supposed to know about it.
I'm not even supposed to know about it. So she's now basically revealing that the reason she knows about it is that somebody told her and broke the law. She said it was a Twitter lawyer that told her about the sealed case. And then earlier she said it was Matt Gaetz. So the reason why she knows about it now is that somebody broke the law. I suspect Matt Gaetz. I've had several lawyers tell me, she doesn't have a sealed case because if she did have a sealed case, she wouldn't even know about it. I have no legal expertise in this. I only have expertise in observing her behavior, and my observations of her is that I don't think she'd be saying a sealed case, unless she had some indication that that was what was happening in some way, shape, or form. And what's interesting is that, like I've said before, she's changed the method by which she was informed of the sealed case. She originally said Matt Gaetz told her about it, and now she's saying it was a Twitter lawyer.
And this is the federal government?
Federal, the DOJ, FBI. And so
there is a
sealed
this
case.
Is so Soviet, it's hard to believe what you're saying is true, but I think it's checkable. There's a sealed case against you. They're investigating you for a crime. They won't tell you.
Why did Tucker say Soviet? That was just weird. It was like he was trying to draw a parallel between what the FBI DOJ was doing and the Soviets, and then he realized he was in Russia and he's supposed to pretend that the Soviet Union was a good thing after all. So he stopped going and making that comparison. I think that's what happened there. Whoops. All right. Clever move. Clever move. It's like it's the Soviet Union. Oh shit, I'm in Russia. I'm actually pro-Russia now. No, it's like, okay, let's go on.
What the crime is.
Right.
But it clearly is a felony, or they claim it's a felony.
Right.
Correct?
And I posted the sealed warrant, and that's been in the media. So the sealed warrant is visible. You can see the case number. Journalists have tried to look it up. My attorneys tried to look it up. No one will tell them what it is. Then they started coming at me.
I didn't know she posted the sealed warrant. That's actually something I have not seen on her timeline. I'm going to have to check that out. I was unaware of that. She could just be lying again. But I don't think she... Actually, I should check myself there. Yeah, she could be lying again. But, all right, I'll check. I'll see if she's actually posted the sealed case.
In more subvert ways, which was, basically harassment, death threats. Particularly it amped up when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Representative Matt Gaetz asked me to testify in the whistleblowers panel. Like I was going to talk about how difficult it is to be a whistleblower because I had been so targeted. And then when I was about to testify, I'll get to that part. But when I was about to testify, things really amped up as far as threats and undermining me. And it was hard to get a job. People thought I was a security threat.
You are a security threat. You had already been exposed as somebody who committed perjury. Nobody's going to hire you as an expert witness there. And plus the fact that you've had like a vast list of people who you have conned, people who have said that you just don't work. You've been fired. Hell, even in the space between 2019 when you told your first story about Joe Biden, about how he rested his hand on your shoulder, that was like the limit of your accusation. And then the March 2020 story about Joe Biden when you had to go and ramp it up to Joe Biden sexually assaulted me because Joe Biden just won Super Tuesday and people were desperate to get Joe Biden replaced by Bernie Sanders so Bernie Sanders could lose to Donald Trump and Trump could have a second term. Listen, you just don't know how to keep a job. You're 60 years old. You have no career at all. You don't have an acting career, a writing career, a poetry career. You don't have a career in Congress. You don't have a career in politics. You don't have a career even taking the census, even being a census manager. You don't have a career in pet sitting. You don't have a career in running nonprofits. You don't have a career in helping with horse sanctuary. You have a career nowhere because you don't work. You don't work, you're lazy, and then you lie and you blame other people when people point out that you just don't work. You have absolutely no career. Nobody is going to hire you.
There were, innuendos. My reputation was destroyed, and we've talked about this. So my attorney basically said, "Okay, that's that. We're going to, file this complaint." And this came after,
I mean, I guess file a complaint because she was exposed as a con artist. Yeah, do what you have to do to keep your name in the media, but I mean, we're just going to keep debunking you, honey.
When I was here in Moscow, Russia, I came here to publicize my book and to oversee the translation of it. And I did an interview with Channel 1. And
which is a Russian TV channel.
And Channel 1 is sanctioned, apparently. And apparently that was, I was here for vacation, so I had packed literally for 5 days. Didn't have much with me. And then about midway through, I started getting messages that I was from former intelligence. They were trying to get me messages, whistleblowers, like, look, you're in danger of being indicted if you go back. I talked to my lawyers about it.
Indicted for what?
For FARA, the Foreign Registration Act, which is the same thing they went after Maria Butina for.
Yeah, Maria Butina is a spy. Maria Butina or Butina, I don't know. Maria Butina is a spy. But I mean, she's actually an operative. She's far more intelligent than Tara Reade. Tara Reade's more of a useful idiot. But yeah, you both were operatives working for a hostile foreign power. And that's illegal. It's illegal to receive money from the Kremlin to put together an operation to help overthrow the presidency. No, she didn't overthrow the presidency, but she did try to illegally influence the election.
And Paul Manafort.
And Maria Butina. If you read, there's a really good article called The Spy Who Wasn't, who really lays out why she wasn't a spy, and she wasn't. She's now working for the State Duma, but
she was 100% a spy, and she was given a position in the State Duma as her payment for all the disagreeable stuff she had to do, include sleep with a bunch of saggy Republican NRA officials. I mean, girl, I sympathize with Maria Butina. That was a dirty, dirty job, and she did it like a good soldier for the Kremlin. She deserves that Duma position. Obviously, they did not give the same assignment for Reade. That is not Reade's specialty. I don't think seduction is Reade's specialty, much as she would like to pretend otherwise. But that was what Maria Butina had to do. And yes, she was definitely a spy.
But she was definitely targeted. But that set the precedent, Paul Manafort in her case.
But wait, just to be clear, you're an American who has accused the sitting president of sexually assaulting you while you worked for him as a young woman, and you have evidence to prove that that's true.
Right.
Absolutely no evidence. Nope. She doesn't have evidence. It's not with her mother. Her mother never said anything. The one person who corroborated her was later outed as a spy. She has literally no evidence at all. All she has is a bunch of changing stories and a bunch of witnesses who turned out to be lying.
Contemporaneous evidence, which I think is key. And all of a sudden, you're the criminal because you wind up in a foreign city and you do a TV interview. Am I missing something?
Well,
I mean, obviously Tucker knows he's missing something. She's a criminal because she accepted a payment from the Kremlin in order to craft this narrative to illegally influence the federal election. But obviously he knows that. He's also someone part of the Kremlin. He's also a Kremlin operative who has his own role to play. So that's why he's pretending that she's credible.
In 2019, if you recall, one of the smears that they made against me was that I was a Russian asset, even though I had no ties to Russia. Immediately out the gate. That was the Biden campaign told that to the New York Times. They said that was their first response. Not a denial, not, anything else. They said, oh, she's a Russian asset.
Now let's talk about what happened in 2019. Now about 6 or 7 women, including Tara Reade, came forward and made a bunch of extremely credible accusations against Joe Biden, which was that Joe Biden doesn't really respect people's personal space. Joe Biden likes to hug women. Joe Biden likes to hug people. He likes to kiss us on the top of our foreheads. That was 20th century male politician behavior. But right now, that behavior is now no longer considered acceptable. So they said, hey, listen up. Could you respect our personal space more? Stop with the hugging. Stop with kissing us on the top of our foreheads, all of that. Please stop doing that. Tara Reade was among them. Her initial story about Joe Biden was that he rested his hand on the back of her neck. He rested his hand on her shoulder. Nothing more than that. She said, hey, listen, nothing illegal. It's not like he tried to kiss me or anything, but it was outdated. It violated my personal space. So Biden came forward and said, you know what, you're right. I'm going to be more mindful of people's personal space from right now on. Now, then a reporter named Edward Isaac Dovere came forward in 2019 and say, hey, look out for this woman, Tara Reade. She has a lot of connections to Russia. She has a lot of, she seems to have a lot of essays praising Putin. She apparently has a lot of praise for Putin. She even wrote an essay in Russian. She has a lot of links to the Kremlin. Be careful of her. Now, in 2019, I read this and I thought, okay, yeah, that looks fishy, but she's one of like 7 other women. They can't all possibly be linked to Russia. Besides, the accusations are accusations of activity by Biden that we've seen on videotape. He's kind of a huggy, kissy guy, which was acceptable in the 90s because politicians love to kiss babies and, give that warm handshake. In fact, I've met politicians. I remember they will always like extend an arm around your shoulders and give you a very nice warm handshake. It's the Bill Clinton maneuver. It's everything. It's not sexual at all. It gives a sort of warmth. It's something that Hillary Clinton wasn't really quite able to do, but every other successful male politician, Joe Biden, Obama to a certain extent. Obama was a little more standoffish. Let me think. Jimmy Carter, Reagan, George W. Bush. George H.W. Bush was a little more cold, but George W. Bush, he also had that real sort of a good warm handshake, a hand around the shoulders. All politicians are masters of that. So when Edward Isaac Dovere in 2019 said, look out for Tara Reade, I thought like, okay, yeah, she looks fishy. She has a lot of links to Russia. But what about the other 7 women? I mean, they're saying the same thing that she is. They have no links to Russia, and they're all accusing Biden of behavior that we've seen on videotape. Then in March 2020, the other women didn't say anything because they had already told their stories. They were telling the truth. But suddenly Tara Reade changed her story. Says, oh, by the way, he raped me too. I forgot to tell you about that. So that's when I realized Edward Isaac Dovere was right. He was right in 2019 to single out Tara Reade specifically and said, keep an eye on that one. He was right. I have always respected that reporter, Edward Isaac Dovere, since then.
And that started in 2019 and got spread around, and then it continued on and had a life of its own because it was spread by former Obama staff, Edward Isaac Dovere, people like that, who have some clout on social media and people listen.
But why did he target you, my dear? Why did he target you? There were 6 or 7 other women saying the same story you were saying back then in 2019. Why did he specifically target you? Because he already knew what you were up to. That's why. He could have said it about all those other 7 women. It would have been not true, but he only targeted you. And back then you were just saying a story that similar to what the other 7 women were saying. He had his eye on you because people who were in the know, who know what Russia does, they knew exactly what you were doing.
So unfortunately, there was that kind of overhanging it. So when I came to Moscow...
So you make this allegation against the president of the United States, then a candidate. A credible allegation, once again. I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't think it was credible. I think it is credible.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson debunked her in May 2020, and then he decided, I guess, to be more into Russia's pocket after he got fired from Fox News because his news story made Fox have to shell out hundreds of millions of dollars to a voting machine company because he smeared that voting machine company knowingly as people who had affected the 2020 election. He caused Fox News to lose a whole bunch of money, so they fired him, and now he's back in the Kremlin's pocket spreading their propaganda.
I think it's true. And they don't even respond. They just accuse you of being a traitor to your country.
Immediately. That was the first response, not even a denial at first. So I thought that was interesting.
And the media amplify this.
Oh, yes. New York Times amplified it. Washington Post did. Everyone did.
Well, I mean, because it was credible. The fact, the fact that you were clearly working for the Kremlin was, it was all over. Here's the thing. Again, this is you, Tara Reade, being bad at your job. You had one job, to accuse Joe Biden of rape. And even then you failed because you left way too many breadcrumbs. You were gloating. Oh, yeah, timing. Wait for it, TikTok. You tweeted that out. So you were already showing that this was an op. You have to delete everything in your social media so people can't use it against you. And you neglected to do that. You neglected to do that. I'm sure the Kremlin was really angry with you about that. You left way too many breadcrumbs for people to really believe your story. You had to delete everything before you came forward so that people wouldn't be able to show the receipts that proved that you were a con artist.
Politico, they did their due diligence for the empire, I guess.
Oh my God, the empire. These buzzwords, their due diligence for the empire. By the way, that's an expression that Jill Stein uses too, the empire. I've noticed that in her little grifter speeches, she tends to say the empire. So that definitely is a Kremlin buzzword.
I didn't really understand the media at that time. Now you have to understand, I'm a regular citizen. I don't have a PR team. I don't have lawyers. Now I have a lawyer, but then I didn't have resources.
How many lawyers does she have? Sometimes she has 2 lawyers. Sometimes she has 3 lawyers. Now she says she has 1 lawyer, some guy named Levy, and somebody who pretends to be a lawyer, Rhoda Sterling. Like the amount of lawyers she says she has fluctuates.
Where were you living?
I was living in California, and I was really naive about the media, and now I understand. I think a lot of people in 2019, 2020 were still a little naive.
Just to be clear, it sounds like you've been a fairly liberal Democrat your whole life.
I was. I really had, really believed. I worked for Leon Panetta as an intern. I worked for Joe Biden. I worked as a Democratic operative on congressional campaigns. I was trained by Homeland Security. I was trained by Seattle Police to help with domestic violence. I was a train the trainer. I donated my time. I worked for.
All of these certifications are like a bit wonky. I've never really seen much evidence of this. I think she likes to elevate, like she went to one workshop about domestic violence. Now she says she was trained by Homeland Security. That's ridiculous. That's like me calling myself a doctor if I went to a workshop on dementia care. Like, okay, I went to one workshop about how to take care of somebody in cognitive decline. That does not make me a doctor or a professional healthcare worker. I haven't really seen these certifications at all. She got herself to be an expert witness, but any lawyer can tell you that the expert witness route is full of corruption. Anybody with like a warm body and a certification can call themselves an expert witness, and it's something that's actually a problem in our justice system now. A lot of people who are simply unqualified are calling themselves, expert witnesses in order to bolster or debunk claims that can't be debunked because they're valid, or claims that should not be bolstered because they're invalid.
For Democrats, I believed in it wholeheartedly. And so it's been heartbreaking when I came forward with evidence how I was treated, how I still am treated. Like to this day, like I get called right now a defector, a traitor. I did back then before I left the U.S.
I keep stepping on your story, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's
Well, I mean, you are a defector and a traitor because, I mean, you defected to Russia. I mean, what else are people supposed to call you? If you take money from a hostile foreign power to illegally influence a federal election in your own country, you are a traitor and a defector. And frankly, Megyn Kelly called you that. And Megyn Kelly was someone who was on your side.
It's just a remarkable story when you lay it out and give the timeline. It's amazing what's happened to you. So just back to where you were before I interrupted you. So you're here on vacation to get a translation of your book done.
Yes.
And you do an interview with local TV, and then you start getting messages from informed people who you trust.
They're not saying the name Matt Gaetz anymore. That's very interesting because during her Spaces interview with Sarah, she said it was Matt Gaetz who told her she had a sealed indictment. She said it was Matt Gaetz who told her she was in danger. Now she's taken Matt Gaetz out of it. She's saying it was a Twitter lawyer, whatever that means, who said she had a sealed indictment. And now Tucker Carlson and her are not using the name Matt Gaetz anymore. That is interesting. That is interesting. I do think Matt Gaetz contacted her, and I think Matt Gaetz broke the law, and now they're trying to cover for that. I find that so interesting.
Tara, you're in danger of being indicted. And what happens then?
Well, I would be put into a cage because with the FAR Act, it's a backdoor into the Espionage Act.
Why does she keep on saying put into a cage? She means go to jail, right? I think she says put into a cage because it's a line that has more emotional resonance than go to jail. Criminals go to jail. She's going to go to jail because she's a criminal. And instead she's going to say, I'm going to be put into a cage like a beautiful bird in a gilded cage, except it's not gilded, it's just a cage. It's just silly, it's just silly. The words she uses to have more emotional resonance. It's just dumb.
Essentially, it's the Federal Registration Act. So you have to register as a
Foreign Agent Registration
Act. Yeah. It's administrative. They never used to even use it, but now they're using it as a backdoor into espionage. So you might recall the Uhuru Group, right?
Very well.
The
black nationalists that we defended.
Right. They're being sentenced this month up to 10 years in prison. And I've read through all their whole legal case, and I have a law degree, so I'm interested in those things. And you know what the charge is? Sowing discord. So I want people to really hear this because
this is something interesting too. We're now about almost halfway through this interview, and she hasn't mentioned like the sexual assault. They sort of breezed over it. They're instead talking about how she's so prosecuted, how they're prosecuting how they are prosecuting her, how she is so persecuted. And let's mention this black nationalist group, the Uhuru group, that's also being prosecuted, I should say. That's also being, in their words, unjustly prosecuted by the government. Again, this is never about her accusation or what happened to her. Because, first of all, it's false. Second of all, they're trying to use whatever issue is at hand to divide the Democratic voter base. She initially thought it would be the Me Too movement in 2020. And then when she was debunked, and the people, even those who were initially sympathetic to her, are saying, listen, there are too many contradictions in her story. There's too much shadiness in her background. Even those who support the Me Too movement can't really support her or believe her story about Joe Biden because there's too many contradictions. They tried to use the Me Too to divide the Democratic voter base. Me Too is no longer in fashion right now. Me Too is no longer in play. Now they're trying to use racial lines, a sort of a growing sense of disenchantment by black voters towards Joe Biden. And they're trying to take advantage of that by saying, hey, this black nationalist group, they're getting prosecuted by the government. Isn't that awful? They're using now a sort of the sense that Joe Biden is showing weakness in historically strong voter demographics like black voters, Latino voters. They're using that, and now they're trying to use that issue to divide the Democratic voter base going into the 2024 election. So that's interesting. Remember, this is never, ever about what she alleges happened to her by Joe Biden. That was all an op.
Sowing discord shouldn't be a crime, and they shouldn't be able, but they're being
sowing discord?
Sowing discord. That's the term under the FAR Act and the backdoor into the Espionage Act.
Sowing discord on behalf of a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence an election is a crime. It's basically a form of treason. If you are a federal agent, you have to register. So at least the government knows what your business is. If you are not registered as a foreign agent, if you are taking money from a foreign government in order to sow discord, that's a crime. Now, if you're sowing discord for your own reasons, like Tucker Carlson, I think he's also getting money from the Kremlin, but I think he's able to cover it up better than Reade is or other sort of lower level people. If you are sowing discord, you know, on your own, like Zenkus is, and not because you're getting paid by a foreign government, then yes, absolutely, that's covered under the First Amendment, as long as it doesn't, cause a riot or something like that, or explicitly express violence. Now, I don't know much about this Uhura group. I don't know if they're trying to promote violence or not, but it sounds like what she's saying is that if they were being prosecuted under the FARA Act, then they probably were receiving money from the Kremlin. They did not register as foreign agents. They were sowing discord at the behest of the Kremlin. And yes, that actually is a violation. It's a form of treason. And yeah, it's a crime that gets prosecuted.
And so they're facing up to 10 years in prison or more. Their passports have been taken away. The sentencing happens this month.
You see, she did that swallow again, which shows that she's lying. She knows, of course, that's not the whole story. If they're getting paid, like I just explained, if they're getting paid by a foreign government to sow discord in America in some way, and possibly to promote violence, I don't know if that's what happened with the Uhura group. I'll have to do more research into that. Though I probably won't, because honestly, I'm not that interested in it. But if you are sowing discord because you are getting paid by a hostile foreign power, that's against the law. And that's why she did that little swallow there, because she knows that what they did is not covered by the First Amendment, and it's very clearly not covered by the First Amendment.
They have no ties to Russia. They simply spoke out against the proxy war against, Russia via Ukraine. And for that, they've been punished. And what I want people to hear is that it's not just January 6 people that are being targeted by the DOJ.
No.
It's to the left. It's to the right.
That's right.
It's someone like me.
You see, again, she's pretending that these are all people who are protected by the First Amendment. The people on January 6th beat up police officers, illegally entered the Capitol, tried to overthrow the government, tried to take Congress people hostage. They broke the law. She broke the law by receiving money from a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence an election. This Uhura group, I don't know what they did, but it seems suspicious that they were backing Russia against Ukraine. Why would a black nationalist group do that? Why are their interests aligned there? If the DOJ did an investigation and found that this group was being paid by Russia to sow discord, that also is against the law. And of course, she's going to target that because it's now no longer about the Me Too movement. I've already discussed this, but she's pretending that this is a blow against free speech, when what it is just simply the prosecution of a crime.
That just had a claim against my former employer that should have been investigated properly and should have been adjudicated in a proper way. And I should have been treated with some dignity instead of having my life torn to pieces.
Oh my God, her acting is like soap opera level. I should have been treated with some dignity. What sort of dignity? You're a con artist. You're a con artist and somebody who has a whole trail of people who you've been cheated, who you have cheated. You're a con artist who committed perjury, who put together like a vile and grotesque accusation against Joe Biden that was untrue. And you, like every single other job in your life, you performed this job badly too. You left breadcrumbs all over the place. You left receipts up and down the internet showing that this was a Russian Kremlin-funded op. And you had been suckered into it because you had something that the Kremlin needed, which was firm evidence that you once worked for Joe Biden. And Russia gave you something that you needed, which is the idea of being the cool girl, the contrarian girl who is totally against what the U.S. is saying and is actually doing what the cool kids do, the pretty cool people like Maria Butina. You get to hang with the pretty people now. That's what she got out of this. Plus, I think she may have been promised money, probably, by being the cool geopolitical expert and writer, even though she knows nothing about politics. And her writing is laughably bad. But she still is getting paid, I think, allegedly, probably, quite a bit of money by RT for her absolutely terrible columns, so that her fee from the Kremlin can be laundered as a salary to her. from RT. She's probably getting like maybe $20 or $30,000 a column from RT because the Kremlin promised her a large sum of money, and they need to give that sum of money to her in a way that at least looks legal, even though it's very suspicious. So it's like, oh, it's just her salary for being a geopolitical expert on RT.
So again, back to the story. You're in Moscow, where we are now, and you hear that you could be indicted or punished under the Foreign Agent Registration Act for giving this interview with a local TV station. And what do you do? How do you respond?
Well, I wanted to look at all the data points. I'm not an impulsive person. I like to think, and I didn't have a lot of time. I mean,
why does she keep on saying I'm not an impulsive person? She really is. I mean, she constantly tweets stuff that's impulsive. She constantly threatens people. She's always, putting together schemes that never pan out, and then she lashes out when they never pan out. I mean, she is an impulsive person. She's also a very stupid person, and she's a lazy person.
We're talking, I had to make this in a 48-hour window, right? And so this was a lot of pressure, but I did. I took the time. I talked to my daughter for hours. I talked to my lawyer. I got more data points of other people who had opinions that were educated. And then I talked to Matt Gaetz. And I am forever grateful that he took my call. And
Oh, so now we are going to talk about Matt Gaetz. Okay. Looks like Tucker Carlson was trying to cover for Matt Gaetz there, but now she's going to mention his name. I mean, thinks that Tara Reade's been pissed at Matt Gaetz because I think after first Kevin McCarthy and now this other guy, Johnson, told him, like, listen, she's not going to testify. She's just too shady. Matt Gaetz just stopped returning her calls, and I think she's pissed about that. She's actually said publicly that she was angry that they weren't returning her calls. And she's been constantly, like, trying to tweet them and get their attention. Um, the thing is that she originally said Matt Gaetz told her there was a sealed indictment against her. Now she's saying a Twitter lawyer told her that. And now here she is talking about Matt Gaetz again.
He was, I want to give him some credit here.
The congressman from Florida.
Yeah, because I was supposed to go the first week of June and walk with him on the Senate floor to get my Senate thing opened. And I wanted to do that. And he advised me, he didn't advise me, I should rephrase that. He gave me information.
Yeah, be careful. Be very, very careful. Because if he was a person who told you had a sealed indictment against you, he broke the law.
He basically just said, I'm worried about you. I'm worried about your personal safety. And you're good where you are, that kind of thing. And he just said he knew how those people operated. And so he was concerned about me.
Those people being employees of the U.S. government.
Right. And he sits on the Intelligence Committee. So when a U.S. congressman tells you something like that, that's a remarkable data point, right? That's a remarkable data point, and I trusted him. Because he could have easily just said, oh, sure, it'll be fine. And I did ask him, I said, please, Congressman, can you help me? Can you get me off these charges? And he said, no, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. My hands are tied. I don't even know what they are. And sometimes some of this intelligence isn't shared. But what I can tell you is just that I understand how these people operate.
So she's now saying that he may have told that. So now she's repeating the story that he told her that there were charges against her. And she said, can you please get me off these charges? And she said, no, I'm sorry. I can't. My hands are tied. So did he tell her about the sealed indictment or not? Or was it a Twitter lawyer? Like, she's still trying to rephrase it to not get him in trouble. And it's weird. She keeps changing her story.
Yeah, I'm really worried about your personal safety because I had received death threats at that point. And you think about it, I'm not that well known. I would have been in the news maybe a day or two. Maybe you or someone else might have talked about me for a couple of times, but it would have been considered a conspiracy theory, like Adam Rich, right?
Who's Adam Rich? I think she means Seth Rich, doesn't she?
And his death?
Seth Rich. Right.
Seth Rich, yeah. Seth Rich.
So yeah. What I find so
she is such a bad geopolitical expert.
Compelling and shocking about your story is that I still don't understand what you did wrong.
In their eyes, they see me as somehow being a traitorous, is the words that they use.
She accepted money from a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence a foreign election.
I think in the USA Today, there was a a former CIA agent who gave a quote saying that my thoughts about America made him viscerally angry. Because I was talking about inflation. I was talking about the fact that there's 600,000 homeless. I was talking about the fact, I'm involved with geopolitics. I have a law degree. I'm interested in it.
So but you're an American. You spent your whole life in.
No, I mean, what you do is you talk a lot about pro-Kremlin propaganda. You smear and slander Ukraine. You constantly put together propaganda saying that, Putin doesn't attack his enemies when Putin basically attacks anyone who is considered a danger, whose government. And the thing is that he makes a point of not hiding it. Like, he makes them fall out of windows. And he knows that people suddenly tumbling out of windows is not realistic. He knows that people will know that that was an assassination, even though the Kremlin says it's not an assassination. He does it as a show of power. He does it as a flex, saying, yeah, you're gonna die, and we're the ones who are gonna kill you if you go against us. Her constant slobbering adulation of Putin will make anyone who believes in personal freedom angry, and goes far beyond anything anyone has suffered in the United States as a result of criticizing the government. We do have a First Amendment, and Russia does not.
In the United States, you worked for the sitting president.
Yeah.
Who you say sexually assaulted you.
Yeah.
You're upset about the state of our economy.
Yeah.
How does that make you a traitor?
Apparently it does. And apparently my views about the proxy war against Russia via Ukraine. And in 2019, I had said, and this is true, that if Joe Biden was elected, that he would go to war with Russia.
You were right.
Yeah.
You said a lot of stuff in 2019. You said that Joe Biden only touched your neck and shoulders and nothing more. And then he decided to change your story. I mean, look at how stiffly she's sitting right there. Look at how tightly her hands are clasped. Again, she's nervous because she knows she's lying. She knows there's a lot of lies going on there. And she knows that people don't get prosecuted in the United States for free speech unless they actually specifically violate a law. That means, promoting violence. It means like trying to incite a riot. That's breaking a law. It means accepting money from a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence a federal election. That's a subsection of treason. And yeah, that's breaking a law.
So just to bottom line the path that you took for people who are hearing this for the first time, you decided you could not come home after that.
I decided then I had to figure out, well, what does one do? Because you can't just decide to stay in a country without proper paperwork and a visa, right? You can't just I'm just going to hang out
That
here.
would make you a stateless person.
Yes. So I reached out, and I'm forever grateful to Maria Butina, because Masha helped me, and she helped me with the process of how to of applying for political asylum, which I did. And it took a few weeks. Only 10% of those cases get accepted, but they do their due diligence, and they felt that there was enough of a problem.
Wow, I wonder why you were one of the elite 10% that were accepted for asylum. Wow, that's lucky. I'm sure it was because you were so persecuted by the United States government. It wasn't because this was part of the deal that the Kremlin owed you for your service in 2020 when you decided to falsely construct a narrative of sexual assault against Joe Biden. That's amazing. Only 10% of the cases for asylum get accepted, and she made it into that elite 10%. I wonder why. I guess she's that special and pretty.
Where they had to give me asylum.
This is after speaking to a U.S. congressman who sits on the House Intel Committee who told you he was worried about your safety.
Correct.
How hard a decision was that for you? That's a big decision.
It was a big decision, but it wasn't just what he said, and I don't want to put this all on Matt Gaetz' shoulders. Yeah, it was several.
Yeah, you've already gotten Matt Gaetz in enough trouble. The fact that you've sort of let slip that he may have told you about a sealed indictment that you were not supposed to know about, that already puts him in the crosshairs of people who persecute that crimes. What he did was illegal. Lev Parnas told you, hey, Matt Gaetz just did something illegal if he actually told you about those charges. And now she's trying to shift the heat off of him. I think that's funny, but it may also play a role. Well, a lot of things play a role as to why Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene are no longer really responding to her. And even when they did reference her, they no longer tag her on Twitter. They no longer really want to be associated with her because she's so clownishly stupid. Um, but I think also the fact that she implicated Matt Gaetz in telling her information that she was not supposed to know, which was something illegal that Matt Gaetz did. The fact she did it probably also played a role in why Matt Gaetz no longer contacts her. That was stupid what she revealed on that Spaces interview, and what she's like sort of revealed, but then tried to deflect in this Tucker Carlson interview. She's not smart. She really isn't.
Several people's, and one, I can't really say who it was, but went to great risk to send me a message to say, if you get off that plane, they're going to take you into custody.
For what?
And violation of the FAR Act. Probably they were talking about violation of sanctions. There was talk that I had red notices, which are, arrest warrants. Like I could have been picked up in Istanbul. And
by whom and for what?
By the U.S. proxy. By that's how they do it with Interpol.
She doesn't even really know the specifics of how that would work. She just says Kremlin buzzwords like empire, proxy, this, that, the other, proxy stuff. Like proxy means puppet, right? By the empire and, Darth Vader. Yeah.
They arrest on behalf of the U.S., like in the UAE, in Dubai. So I had a lawyer who actually specialized in people that have that happen to them. And she got the red notices pulled.
Rhoda Sterling, there's a lot of evidence to show she's not a lawyer, unless she got a law degree between the time she was between the time that she was but between the time that a former employee of hers complained about the fact that she was presenting herself as a lawyer when she didn't possess a law degree, and when this interview aired. If she obtained a law degree in the interim between those 2 points in time, then maybe she is a lawyer. But there is evidence that I've seen that Rhoda Sterling is not actually a lawyer, but apparently poses as one.
And so
allegedly.
Now those are gone now that I'm under asylum. But they'll extradite you from every country. So the only 2 countries that will not extradite an American back to America is Iran and Russia.
This is a really crazy story.
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't have any way to get your story to an American audience.
No.
What? She's on Twitter. She's on Twitter. She told her story again and again and again in the New York Times, in The Guardian. The Guardian did a story on her. She told her story to Fox News. She told her story to Tucker Carlson on Fox News. She has told her story to every single person. The problem isn't that people aren't hearing her story. The problem is that people aren't believing her story. Fuck, she has a published here, and nobody's buying it, literally and figuratively. The problem is that she's not credible.
No, it's very difficult. I mean, I have a large Twitter following, and I have a podcast that I do,
But no one has called. What's so interesting to me is we have a supposedly free media in the United States as a backstop against a check against government overreach, too much power in the hands of too few. And so it's supposed to be a self-correcting system. If something truly crazy and totalitarian happens to an American citizen, our media is supposed to take an interest and alert the rest of the country so they know what's going on. So they can say, whoa, 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 whoa. I may not like Tara Reade, and I don't agree with her or whatever, but you can't do that. You can't arrest someone for no crime or for...
That she did commit a crime. She violated the FARA Act. She committed perjury. She took money from a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence a foreign election. That's a crime. That's a crime. Do you know how many people are just walking free after criticizing Joe Biden and they haven't been arrested? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Tucker Carlson, like a lot of people in Congress, like J.D. Vance. Hell, like Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz paid a 17-year-old to have sex with him, and he's still not arrested. So many people have criticized Biden and they haven't been arrested. Do you know why? Because they technically haven't broken any laws. Or if they had, those laws are like there's some stopgaps in them, like Matt Gaetz and that 17-year-old girl. I think that's still grinding its way through the courts. But the fact is that she did break a law. She did break a law, and that's why she's in Russia. If you break the law, you get prosecuted. I mean, she's not getting arrested for free speech. She's she's portraying herself as having been arrested for free speech, but she was arrested because she literally broke the law. If you accept money from a hostile foreign power in order to illegally influence a federal election, that breaks the law.
Complaining about the president? Like, has anyone from the New York Times called you?
No.
Or Politico?
No.
She was, wait a second. She was contacted by many people, including the New York Times. The New York Times actually ran a piece on her, and that was when her story started to fall apart. Because when she initially came forward with her story about, oh, Joe Biden sexually assaulted me, she insisted that her only pictures be her glamour shots from the late 80s, early 90s, all these beautiful model shots. The New York Times posted contemporary photos of her in her late 50s. And she was upset about that. Katie Halpert revealed that they showed photos of her now as an obese older woman. And that's when suddenly a lot of people who have been ripped off by her realized, oh, that Tara Reade, I know her. And people started coming out of the woodwork saying, this woman is not who she says she is. She's a con artist. That's the reason why she didn't want contemporary photos published by the New York Times of her. First of all, a vanity reason. She's old and fat now. She only wanted young and beautiful photos published. Secondly, because she knew that when contemporary photos of her were published, all the people she had ripped off, all the people she had conned, all the people she had lied to would recognize her immediately and start telling their own stories about her.
The Daily Beast to say, just tell us what's happened with you.
Those no, of course not. They only do hit pieces. They're working for the empire. There's no question. They're just working for the.
I just love the fact she uses the word empire. It's the same word that Jill Stein uses, and it's like the idea that she's ignoring the fact that 2020, like she got wall-to-wall coverage from like late March up to early May, until finally she started to be debunked by first a Vox reporter who found out that someone who corroborated her was completely lying, and then secondly secondly by PBS, and thirdly by people who found out that she committed perjury. I mean, she's not pretending she got no coverage. She got coverage and then she got debunked, and now people are just not willing to listen to a liar anymore. Sorry. Well, except for me, because I like laughing at her.
As proxies to the U.S. government. I mean, I think, some of the reporting that Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger have been doing has been really valuable.
Yes.
Because they've been showing how there's think tanks, actual think tanks that basically put out articles to these, and then they reprint them. They don't even change them that much. So these are planted articles. Like there was all kinds of lies told about me, that I lied about my education. Now, I never lied about my education, that I defected to Russia.
Yeah, she did lie about her education. She never had a degree from Antioch College. And this idea of like think tanks put out articles and they plant articles. Articles are not published until they are corroborated. Think tanks will, yes, they'll give articles to newspapers. Newspapers don't have their own think tanks. They have to go from other research centers. They have to go from other people who are, actually researching certain issues. And then they will have those issues published in newspapers. Like, she acts like that's a huge scandal. No, if there's a think tank, if there's a university, if there's a school or a polling organization or a company that has some breaking news, they're going to go to a newspaper, and the newspaper is going to publish it. If the news actually, is corroborated and and is shown to be credible, and she's acting like that's a scandal.
I didn't defect to Russia. I was threatened with my life and my family, and I didn't want my family.
Wait a second, she was threatened with her life? What is she saying now? I thought she was simply threatened with being, quote unquote, put in a cage. I thought she was being threatened with arrest. Now she's saying that they were going to kill her? Her story keeps on getting more and more dramatic.
Family harmed. I didn't want to be at risk of being put in a cage.
Did she say she was threatened with her family?
I can't tell you. So these are planted articles. Like there was all kinds of lies told about me, that I lied about my education. Now, I never lied about my education, that I defected to Russia. I didn't defect to Russia. I was threatened with my life and my family, and I didn't want my family harmed. I didn't want.
Okay, so now she's alleging that people were going to kill her family, people were going to kill her. She was threatened with her life. She was threatened with her family. Like, what? These allegations are getting more and more outrageous.
To be at risk of being put in a cage. And I can't tell you what that conversation was like with my daughter. That it was hard.
Have you seen her?
No.
Why?
I can't. Under political asylum, I can't leave the borders of Russia because, I'm under the protection. And to be frank, I don't know when I can ever go back to the U.S. I don't know when there's a safe.
But what have you done?
Exactly. Here's the thing. You have to lead good lives. Don't break the law. Don't rip off people. Don't con people. Don't, don't lie. Don't accuse people of horrible crimes because the Kremlin tells you to. You need to lead good lives. Be kind to people. And you will not get it backlashed onto you. The more evil you do, the more you get the backlash back on you. Yeah, she can't leave Russia. And God bless her daughter, because there have been a few people who say that her daughter's been unduly influenced by her. Her daughter's about to get married. I hope that free from her mother's overbearing influence, she might, and now like married to someone, I'm hoping that her mother may be able to, not her mother, I'm hoping that her daughter may be able to reconnect with other people in her family and may be able to grow and may be able to perhaps recover from a lot of the emotional manipulation that allegedly she was a victim of by her mother. This is all very alleged, and it gets into her personal life that I feel uncomfortable dissecting. I'm here to talk about what she's put together publicly. Um, that being said, yeah, lead good lives. Don't be criminals. Don't be liars. Don't be exaggerators. And you are less likely to be put in a bad situation.
In their eyes, I've committed some sort of crime and I haven't done anything. And that's the thing. I've never committed a crime. I'm not a traitor.
Yeah, well, you've committed perjury, you've accepted money from a hostile foreign power, you've lied, you've conned, you've skipped out on leases, you've caused damage, you've a lot of crime, my dear. You've done a lot of low-level crime. And now you've done some high-level crime, and hello, consequences.
I'm not a spy for Russia.
No, you're too dumb to be a spy. You're a useful idiot. Maria Butina is a spy. You're just a fat American woman who got, coddled and conned into doing an op that now you're paying the consequences for.
I don't have tons of resources. I don't have a PR team. I just told the truth about Joe Biden. I told the truth about what he did to me, and I told the truth about the corruption. And I wouldn't.
Really? No, you didn't. You kept on changing your story. You kept on saying that first he put his hand on your shoulder, and then when Joe Biden won Super Tuesday and people realized that he was going to be the nominee and probably the president, unless you did something quickly, you changed your story and said that he raped you. And that was, at first you tried to corroborate it, but it turned out the person corroborating you was lying. You said it happened in a room, and when people found out that the room didn't exist, you said it happened in a corridor, and then you wouldn't tell us exactly when it happened, and then people started finding out that you did perjury and that you lied a lot and that your story kept changing, and then essentially it was all debunked. That's what happened. But there's one thing that's for sure. You never told the truth about Joe Biden.
Be quiet about it. And I was demanding to be heard. But let's say I'm not going to get $83 million like E. Jean Carroll or a perfume line like Stormy Daniels, right? Or treated.
I don't think E. Jean Carroll's getting that $83 million. Trump is never going to give her that. E. Jean Carroll told the truth. Sure, none of the people who corroborated her were outed as liars. She literally has DNA evidence. And let's talk about Stormy Daniels. She was arrested by pro-Trump cops. You've never been arrested. You've fluttered away to Russia. You're in Moscow sipping coffee and pretending you have a good life. Stormy Daniels was literally arrested by pro-Trump cops, and then she had to sue them. And she did get some money for that. They are both telling the truth. Stormy Daniels told the truth. E. Jean Carroll told the truth. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford told the truth. Told the truth. That's why they're not getting prosecuted. When you lie, and more importantly, when you break the law, that's when you get consequences for your actions.
Like with dignity in the press, like those women were, because they accused a Republican. No.
Were they treated with dignity in the press? Do you understand what they were saying about E. Jean Carroll? They were pretending that she was just the quote-unquote too ugly to be raped thing. The people would photograph E. Jean Carroll modern day and situate her next to Marla Maples, whom Trump was dating at the time that he raped E. Jean Carroll. And they said, oh, why would he even lay a hand on this ugly hag when he had Marla Maples, waiting for him at home? E. Jean Carroll was shamed a great deal. She was called crazy. She was called a liar. Stormy Daniels, the stuff that was said to her. Now, she has a thicker skin. She's literally a porn star. Nevertheless, she got backlash to the point where she was arrested. Stormy Daniels was arrested by pro-Trump cops. You cannot pretend that you have received less of a backlash. You cannot pretend that you have received more of a backlash, Miss Tara Reade, than Stormy Daniels or E. Jean Carroll. That's simply false.
I was attacked and
no one has
destroyed.
defended you.
Not really. Rose McGowan. She really.
Rose McGowan is she's crazy as hell. And look at that. Look at that. Tara Reade's not going to throw Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene under the bus because they haven't been returning her calls because she's phony as hell.
It has. Megyn Kelly gave me a platform a couple of times. Of course, you have.
Megyn Kelly, absolutely skinned her alive in an interview, and that was lovely. I loved reacting to that Megyn Kelly interview. It was absolutely fantastic. Now that I have this screen recorder set up, I might react to it again so that you can actually see her expressions. I do think reacting with a black screen made it was like I missed the nuance, and I can now react with more nuance. I might try and do that. But Megyn Kelly skinned her alive. Even the first interview with Megyn Kelly in 2020, Megyn Kelly was the one who was like saying, "So you had crotchless panties?" She tried to get Tara Reade to explain, okay, mechanically, how did this rape occur? And Tara Reade had to go and I was wearing lingerie. There wasn't much to it. And she had to keep on lying and lying and lying and got deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of lies until she basically had to admit, I was wearing crotchless panties to work. And at that point, people were like, this is just too unlikely.
Other than that, independent media, even the lefties, even though the Me Too reporters, silence. You don't see any Me Too reporters coming and telling my story, do you? Never once.
Well, that's because you're lying. I think the Me Too reporters only want to talk to women who are telling the truth, not women who opportunistically use the Me Too movement to advance their own agenda by forcing the Me Too movement to platform people who are obviously lying.
They protect Biden. This is all about catch and kill. And if you recall, I went to Time's Up for help, right?
Catch and kill was what the National Enquirer did to protect Trump. That's what Ronan Farrow exposed. Catch and kill was what David Pecker did to all the stories that women had to tell about Trump. He would buy the stories from them so the women couldn't tell them to another media, and then he would never publish those stories. That's what catch and kill is.
Time's Up.
When she says catch and kill, she's implying that people bought her story so she could no longer tell her story because they owned the rights to it and then they didn't publish it. That never happened. And that's not what catch and kill means. Catch and kill, well, I've already explained. Catch and kill means pay the woman for her story so she, under terms of contract for payment, cannot tell anyone else about it, cannot tell any periodical about it, and then never publish her story. So the story is buried. That never happened to Reade. No one's paying her a damn dime for her story because, well, first of all, it's fake. Second of all, she's already told her story. And believe me, yes, it's a story. It's a work of fiction.
Roberta Kaplan, who just represented E. Jean Carroll. Roberta Kaplan had to resign from Time's Up because she was smearing me and the Cuomo, survivors, the people that talked about Cuomo. And because she did that, she had to resign. Time's Up was dismantled.
Well, Roberta Kaplan resigned more because of what happened with Cuomo. Now, Cuomo's accusers, there are a couple of them I have my doubts about, but I do believe most of his accusers are credible. And Roberta Kaplan didn't really do her due diligence with that, so she resigned because of that. Nobody believed Roberta Kaplan had to resign because of Tara Reade. They knew that was actually Time's Up doing their due diligence by making sure that their organization wasn't being used by someone who was lying. What happened with Tara Reade, now this is alleged, but this is what Time's Up said, is that they were quite willing to represent her, but she did not want to prosecute Biden because the statute of limitations was up. Also because, if she did, she would probably be exposed as a lie. She didn't want to do a civil action, again, statute of limitations, also discovery, and she would have been immediately exposed through discovery as lying. Instead, she wanted an unpaid PR firm to go and bully people who were criticizing her. And Time's Up said that's not what we do. We're not an unpaid PR firm. And she was angry about that.
And she went on to represent, Eugene Carroll. And Eugene Carroll publicly said that she was going to now support Biden and give him money. It's unbelievable.
It's totally evil. It's completely evil.
It is evil.
It's evil to support Biden. It's evil to support Biden and not the liar and con artist who accused Biden of rape for her own purposes. It's evil to falsely accuse someone publicly of rape for your own purpose. That is evil. Can you imagine what Biden's family went through with that? Can you imagine what Biden's wife went through with that when you decided to make that accusation against him because the Kremlin asked you to? Believe me, that is evil.
Where does it, I just can't get past this question, and I don't want to upset you, but of your daughter. I mean, you have a child in the United States.
Yeah.
Her daughter's almost 30. Don't call her a child. Come on.
That's been hard. I missed her graduation. She got her master's. They went after her actually while I was here in Russia. The first month I was here, a bunch of Democratic troll farms or whatever doxed her photo, her work address, tried to get her fired. She was interning as a therapist. She's a therapist with children. She works with play therapy with children who've been traumatized.
Dude, her public photo was part of that work there. It's still there. Publicly, her photo is still at that work area. Tried to get her fired? Seriously? No. She had a public photo on a workplace.
Traumatized, and they tried to get her fired, and they were saying it out loud and calling the work. But luckily, my daughter's work is, not interested in those kinds of, smears. So my daughter's.
Whoever was calling her work is not affiliated with this account, believe me. But I happen to know for the fact that where she works, put her photo publicly. You can't dox someone if they have a public photo. Doxing means revealing private information.
It's fine. But having her face plastered everywhere because she's associated with me. My horse.
Yeah, amazing. Can you imagine putting your daughter through that hell? Because you decided to have a little op. You decided to have a little op where you falsely accused a presidential candidate of rape. Now your family's suffering negatively for it. The fact is, even before that, you publicly posted your daughter's face all over your Twitter, all over your Instagram. You made your daughter make a video talking about how, she supports you and this and that and the other. You put your daughter in the public eye. And now you're pretending that other people are at fault because your daughter had her picture publicly posted at her workplace. No one would know who your daughter was until you decided to put her face on your Instagram and on your Twitter. Now we all know who your daughter is. That's on you, my dear.
Horse was almost kidnapped. They literally came and took him almost on a trailer, and luckily the owners of the stable were there. So I'm getting this call.
Your horse was not almost kidnapped. You adopted that horse, you got a free horse, and in return you were contractually obligated to do a few things, like make sure the horse was well taken care of, the horse had good veterinary care, and that the owner of the sanctuary who gave you the horse was aware on a monthly basis that you would be there taking care of the horse. When you defected to Russia, you were no longer there taking care of the horse. So the owner of the horse sanctuary did her due diligence by making sure that the horse got picked up, because you were no longer fulfilling your end of the contract in exchange for being the owner of a free horse. You did not fulfill your end of the contract. The contract was rendered null and void, and the owner tried to take the horse back. And this is all alleged, but apparently they're no longer taking the horse because somebody is caring for the horse right now. But nobody tried to kidnap your horse. You're smearing the woman who only had the horse's best interests in mind when you decide to abandon your animals and scurry off to Russia because you knew you were about to be arrested.
At 3 a.m. in Moscow that my horse is being loaded on a trailer by someone I don't know who's going to take him for Joe Biden. That was what they were saying. They were taking.
No, that's a complete lie. It was the person who was the owner of the horse sanctuary who gave you that horse. That's a complete lie. She literally put it on her Twitter. We have all the receipts. You know exactly who took that horse or is trying to take that horse. It was a woman who you ripped off. First of all, the woman who had to pay all your vet bills for you, and the woman who gave you that horse, and who you were contractually obligated to inform her about the horse. And when you moved to Russia and she didn't know who was taking care of the horse, she tried to take it back to her sanctuary because you were no longer fulfilling your contract.
Taking him for Joe. So luckily he's safe. But I mean, it's been sort of relentless. It's been, and I know public figures, I don't consider myself a public figure, but other public figures do get harassed like that. But when you're a regular citizen like I am, it's really daunting, especially if we don't have the resources to protect yourself, right?
You're a public figure, my dear, and you asked for all of it.
And wish I didn't.
Do you expect you'll be able to see your daughter anytime soon?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable putting her in, the spotlight again. She's about to get married.
Can you go to the wedding?
I can't go to the wedding. And
I really hope her daughter gets, a free and easy life and free of her mother's rather toxic influence now that now that Tara Reade can't leave Russia. I hope that will allow her to make connections that she otherwise wouldn't have been able to make because Tara Reade had too much of a sort of suffocating influence on her.
I'm upset, but, and I don't want to be a victim here. I'm angry.
You always get to be the victim. That's who you are. You will always be the victim. That's been your entire life's purpose. Always a victim, never the one accountable.
And I want Joe Biden to be held accountable. He's taken years of my life. He's destroyed it 3 times over. And I'm good.
How? He's destroyed it? You destroyed your own life. You couldn't work in his office because you were throwing out constituents' mail, so you got fired. And then you've been fired from every single job since then because you never work, you're lazy, you're a con artist, and you lie all the time. And you manipulate people, and you always cast yourself as a victim. Seriously. Dude, my dear, you know this, and you're 60 years old, and you have thrown your entire life away.
Going to continue to fight.
Tara Reade, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you very much for that reaction. We are done now. That was, that took longer than I anticipated. I'm sorry about that, but thank you for sticking with us, and we'll be back